And the first thing I would like to do, sir, is to empathize with the Minister of Finance. He has brought a budget to this House, and the last speaker made it 22 of his colleague ministers, and none of them have sought to defend the 57 measures in the 30 pages of his budget presentation. But what they've all sought to do is to explain how they're going to spend the money that they will get. But they are not standing with him. They are not standing with him as it relates to the measures of how he has to be able to collect the monies to be able to give to them. So that's the first thing. I empathize with the Minister of Finance. Secondly, sir, I have a recommendation to make. Based upon Article 106 of the Constitution of Guyana, 106.2, the Cabinet shall aid and advise the President in the general direction and control of the Government of Guyana, and shall be collectively responsible thereof to the Parliament. This Cabinet needs to be fired. They have not given the President of Guyana the best advice. My colleagues on this side of the House have indicated every sector of the population have cried out against this budget. And is this the budget that they have sat and decided and presented to the nation? Mr. Speaker, if there's anything that I could thank the Minister of Finance for in this budget, is for correctly diagnosing the state of the economy. He has done so very well, sir. Mr. Speaker, this is what he had to say. And I thank him for the correct diagnosis. He said, the budget of 2016 projected an overall growth rate of 4.4%, and at mid-year, real economic growth rate at 2% was achieved. However, since several industries and sectors, including sugar, rice, construction, and wholesale and retail trade, were showing signs of distress already, the projected growth rate for 2016 was revised downwards to 4%. Since then, several unexpected developments, including the downsizing of Baram and Demerara Timbers' operation in the forestry sector, structural changes and ongoing strikes in the sugar industry, and a slow pace of implementation of the public sector investment program conspired to reduce real growth to 2.6%. So we're not talking here, Mr. Speaker, only about underperformance in the private sector. The public sector investment program is totally under the control of the government. And the minister have said in the opening stages of his budget speech, mismanagement, ineptitude, incompetence have plagued this government, and it has produced underperformance. The public sector investment program. And Mr. Speaker, I thought my colleague that spoke before me, the Minister of Public Infrastructure, which really has the hug of the public sector investment money, would have told us about why he underperformed and how he plans to perform. But all he have done is given us a shopping list, like if it is a housewife going to market to buy sugar, flour, bulk, butter, rice, and oil, all of which will now attract VAT. I'm disappointed, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, listen to what is next. Agriculture is expected to contract significantly with dismal performance. Rice, a decline from 12.8%. Livestock is expected to contract 5.1%. Forestry expected to contract significantly, all the minister's words, not mine, 33.3%. Mining and quarrying is expected to grow 35.7%. So the minister has correctly diagnosed the state of our economy. But you know what the minister and the cabinet is guilty of, sir? Negligence and malpractice. Because if you discover what is the problem with the patient, fix it. You have a responsibility to fix it. And what they are guilty of, sir, is negligence and malpractice. Why do I say so, sir? Because if you discover that gold is what is keeping the economy going, don't punish it. Incentivize it so it could do better.
That's right.
Incentivize it so it could do better. But this budget, sir, we hear from the Guyana Gold and Diamond Miners Association and the Women Miners Association. I don't need to take up my time to read what they said. It's now known in the House, being used so often. They have spoke about how they will be stifled by way of this budget. The manufacturing sector is contracting. Construction is declining from 10.5% to 3.2%. Mr. Speaker, the budget measures that have been outlined in the 30 pages of Minister Jordan's presentation to this Parliament will not incentivize any of these contracting sectors or declining sectors or sectors that would have performed terribly. It will make it worse. And the one sector that is doing well, they have now put a strangulation on it by way of these measures. So I am saying the cabinet that approved this budget is guilty of malpractice and negligence. And it is on those grounds they ought to be fired. And if the president don't fire them, the people of Guyana will fire them. Mr. Speaker, all that was described by the declining in the economy, a growth that was projected at 4.4%, then went to 4%, now we're hearing 2.6%. It means loss of jobs. And I would like any one of the speakers coming after me, including the Prime Minister, to tell this nation which part of this budget will create jobs and how many jobs. Because we are searching it, sir. The growing unemployment is leading to increase in crime and other forms of social pathology, sir. In this budget, there is no new innovative ideas of how to grow and expand the economy in an accelerated and sustainable manner. Mr. Speaker, your budget must express or show to the nation your priorities. And if I read this budget correctly, sir, the APNU's budget, their priorities is taxation. Taxation. Mr. Speaker, a government supposed to create opportunities for people to prosper in an environment where they are free and where human rights are respected. That's the role of a government. But you know what we have here in this budget, Mr. Speaker? A government making money off of the people. The government is supposed to be providing an environment for the people to prosper, the private sector to prosper, the individuals, families to prosper. But this budget, the government is making money off of the people. Mr. Speaker, what can we expect? We could expect increase in inflation. This budget does not inspire confidence. It gives no clear direction as to where this country is going. Mr. Speaker, what is worrying, because all of the 22 ministers who stood up so far and read out their shopping lists as if that is the good life, because if a husband stops at Bakewell and buy a loaf of bread and carry it home at night, it's not a good life. He's expected to do that. If you build a road, you're expected to do that.
That's the job.
If you buy textbooks to schools, you're expected to do that. We were expecting, and we are still expecting, a budget that tells us how do we move from here to the next level of prosperity in Guyana. But we're not moving from here to there, we are moving backwards. But Mr. Speaker, what is more interesting, and I would like the House to listen attentively because numbers are important and people like to cry when they hear numbers. In an act of desperation, this government, APNU AFC government, has actually cut their own budget by $21 billion. Let me tell you how. The budget is $250 billion. 19 plus billion is to the payment of foreign debt. It doesn't come to this House by way of an appropriation bill. The appropriation bill before this House is just over $230 billion. The minister said all budgetary and statutory agencies will have to start paying VAT from this budget. It's in its measures. Take away salaries from recurrent expenditure. You're left with $118 billion, $120 million, $135,000. When you go to the market to buy goods and services from all the ministries and the agencies, you have to pay VAT. The VAT that will be paid is $16 billion, $536,818,900.
Government paying VAT.
The capital expenditure of this budget, sir, you will not pay VAT on the foreign funded programs. You'll pay VAT on the local programs. If you check your budget book, you will see local expenditure on the capital is $34,614,408,000. The 14% VAT that will attract, sir, is $4,846,017,120. The budget of 2017 is not $250 billion. It's $228 billion.
What?
So that's the first thing that needs to be pointed out. We need to do our homework correctly. In a desperate act of getting resources, they are even seeking to take away $21,382,836,000 from the budgetary expenditure to go back into the treasury as VAT, robbing the people of goods and services.
Whoa,
Mr. Speaker, so the question needs to be asked, where did the money go in this budget? Where is the money placed? But let me tell you where is the money placed. Yes, that is why you didn't read it. Mr. Speaker, there's a great disconnect between this budget speech and this book of numbers. This one was written at Congress Place. This one was fixed at the Ministry of Finance. So when you read the Congress Place book,
that's miles apart.
It's miles apart from the Ministry of Finance numbers. And I will prove the case. I will prove the case to you. Now listen. In Budget 2016, the Office of the Ministry of the Presidency they have an increased allocation. 1,100,000,000 more over 2016. Mr. Speaker,
Where is that?
this is the Ministry of the Presidency. But I'd like the House to hear what Mr. Raman McRae, a sole source forensic auditor chosen by the APNU government to investigate accounts and activities of the PPPC. So he's no friend of the PPPC. He was sole source, not through competitive bidding. He was sole source. This is what he has to say. In reviewing the 2016 budget, we express our disappointment on the question of contract employees due to the continued increase in the number and costs. We give an example of Agency 5, Ministry of the Presidency, which report a planned increase in contract employees from 298 in 2015 to 505 in 2016. Fast forward to budget 2017, the number climbs to 569. Whoa! Whoa!
How many are advisors?
Well. I know my colleague, the Minister of Social Cohesion, is becoming uncomfortable. Because, Mr. Speaker, there is now a new program under the Ministry of Presidency, Social Cohesion. 90.129 million. Mr. Speaker, let me tell you how this money will be spent. 10 new staff. Employment costs for that department, or whatever you call it, 34,929,000.
It's a slush fund.
But, Mr. Speaker, I don't know that the Ministry of Social Cohesion is the public service ministry that sends people for training. Under the budgetary line training, $30 million. Oh, we look forward to the examination of the estimates. This must be a slush fund.
I think so.
Mr. Speaker, when it comes to race relations, we need more than just platitudes. We had the consideration of constitutional agencies in this House. And every one of those constitutional agencies had their budgets cut and slashed, including the constitutional agency that is responsible for the improvement of race relations in Guyana, the Ethnic Relations Commission. But listen, the minister found fiscal space to allot a new program to the Ministry of the Presidency called Social Cohesion. Mr. Speaker, I now turn my attention to infrastructure. Now, I did tell you, sir, that this book and this book was written in two different places. One was in the East, Congress Place, one in the West, Ministry of Finance. Because when we go to this good life that we are talking about, Mr. Speaker, listen to what we are having here. The minister in his budget says we are expanding road networks and all the rest of it. We're going to have all these linkages. Listen to what his budget. Let the people of Ghana know. East Bank, East Coast, Demerara Road linkage. The allocation in the budget, 81 million. And here it is for what? Provision of studies. 2 jobs. 2 consultants. 2 jobs.
The money gone.
No works for the ordinary man who think he getting a gig. 2 jobs, 2 consultants. Listen to this. Guyana, Brazil, land transport link and deep water port. Laudable, fantastic ideas. Of course, started under the PPP-C. But listen to the budgetary allocations. That's why I said the 2 things were written in 2 different places. 42 million. provision of studies, 2 jobs. So how many jobs we've created so far? 4. And none of them will be Guyanese. Because you know how these things go. Let us continue with, and I'm sorry that the Minister Patterson, oh, he's here. I'm glad he's listening. Listen to this. Mr. Speaker, we were oh yes, Minister of Indigenous People Affairs this morning, the Linden, Mabura Road, and all the rest of it.
Highway to happiness.
And we are building a bridge across the Kurupakari, the bridge of Kurupakari across the Essequibo River. Mr. Speaker, listen to the budgetary allocations. 50 million, studies, 2 jobs. How many jobs have we created so far? 6. This is the major infrastructure development that is taking place in Guyana. 6 jobs. Listen to this now. Minister Patterson just finished regaling this house about waterfront development and boardwalk. Listen to this. Listen to the budgetary allocations. Waterfront development, 50 million, provision of study, 2 more jobs. How many jobs have we got? 8. Infrastructure development. Mr. Speaker, we continue. Central transport planning, 55 million, provision of studies. How much more jobs? 2 jobs. So we have 10 jobs. Mr. Speaker, and apart from all this big fancy talk, Chelly Jagan International Airport expansion was a project started under the People's Progressive Party Civic, which was eventually remodeled. And I repeat for emphasis in this house, we are getting less and paying more. Mr. Speaker, the 4-way highway expansion from Better Hope to Belfield. Mr. Patterson regaled this house, but he should have been honest enough to tell this house that that was mobilized and set in train by the PPPC with financing from India. So it's nothing new.
Already in place.
It's nothing new. So when you go Sheriff Mandela and the East Bank Borbis Road, provisions are now made, but that was already a plan of the People's Progressive Party Civic, monies mobilized by the IDB for funding of these projects. So where is the big fancy talk of infrastructural development and the creation of jobs? It's the same old, same old.
Jobs less than the VAT.
So, Mr. Speaker, 8 jobs on consultants. Mr. Speaker, before we left office, and we promised the people of Guyana these things, we were working on the Amalia Falls Hydro Project. We were working on the Deepwater Harbor. We had done the pre-feasibility studies for a fixed-span bridge across the Demerara River. We had the airport modernization program. We had plans in place for the Quarantine River Bridge connecting Quarantine and Suriname. We had the Linden to Lethem Brazil Road corridor. And Mr. Speaker,
Diamond bypass.
I can go on and list it. But you know something? If we pave, and I agree that the Linden to Lethem Road must be paved, it will help. But if we pave a piece of road from Linden to Mabura, and all the other bridges are collapsing when you continue, where the traffic going? I say nothing further. Mr. Speaker, so whether it was the East Bank Road or the East Coast Highway or the West Coast Road that is currently undergoing works, these were things that were undertaken by the PPPC. Thanks for continuing them, but please get some new ideas if you're going to come and talk to this house about infrastructure as a major plank of development.
That's right.
What we should stop is the fiddling. Because what is happening, and the nation needs to know, when projects that were in train are now advertised and applications are made, at the level of the evaluation, there is fiddling. Because if they're not getting an outcome that is desirable, like we see happening at the GPL one, for 10 months, it was held up and fiddling was taking place. Mr. Speaker, the mismanagement, the political interference in the evaluation process must come to an end. And I call upon the Public Procurement Commission to take note and start addressing these issues. We are yet to hear of something that will capture the imagination of the Guyanese people. Mr. Speaker, there are a couple of other things that must be addressed. Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member, you will be speaking for 25 minutes.
Already, sir? Thank you, sir. Mr. Speaker, this budget can best be described as atrocious, utterly odious, and iniquitous. Mr. Speaker, Christopher Ram again on the VAT and the impact of VAT, because we're trying to hide this issue. No friend of the PPP, a sole source, accountant, preferred choice of the APNU government. This is what he has to say. There is a myth that from the tax, he must absorb the VAT and could only maintain his profitability by passing on the cost to consumers. Bread gone up. Following the announcement of the changes, the staff of Ram & McRae have applied the new arrangements to a most recent actual shopping list. And listen to this, sir. Post-2017 budget, where you pay 14% VAT, 2% less, on buying the same items, before VAT, it will come up to $348,406. And the VAT that you have to pay is $37,575, because $80,011 of that amount was exempt. In the same basket, that will cost, before VAT, $348,406, because $253,985 was zero rated, and $3,400 was exempt. With 16% VAT, you only paid $14,563. So you're buying the same items with 14% VAT. After this budget is passed, if it is passed, well, we're calling for its withdrawal,
And you're paying more.
and you have to pay in taxes $37,575 in tax.
What?
Before, with 16% VAT, with things that were zero rated and exempt, you're only paying $14,563 in VAT. So you understand what is happening there, sir? The VAT is 14%, but you're spending more than 2 times. When the VAT was 16%, you're paying less. Guyanese were better off with the arrangements that were in place, where items were zero rated and exempt with 16% VAT. It's an established fact. Mr. Speaker, this budget is an assault on the private sector, on young professionals, and the self-employed. The minister indicated, sir, in his new tax computations, that there will be no need for tax-free benefits. Notice need to be given to everybody out there. All your allowances are now taxable. All allowances are now taxable. That is what the minister is telling this nation.
Honourable member, you need to wrap up now.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I close by the way I started out. This budget should be withdrawn. This budget is not healthy for the people of Guyana. The rhetoric of the speech is not matched with the numbers that are placed in this book. And until we could get the two things reconciled, we need to withdraw this budget, and I think the cabinet needs to take full responsibility for leading us off this road of hardship.
I thank the honourable member for